everyone, and welcome to the virtual colloquium organized by Institute of Teacher Education International Languages Campus, or better known as IPG-KBA, with the theme Capacity Building, Educational Leadership and Management. My name is Prema Nair, and I will be your moderator for today's session. I work as a lecturer in IPG-KBA, and I'm very excited to be hosting this session today. If you are new to this webinar series, welcome, selamat datang, and I hope you will stay tuned till the end of the session because today we have not one but two very special speakers from Malaysia. Before we get to know them, let me lay out a few housekeeping matters. First, everyone who attends to the webinar series will be given an e-certificate. Therefore, do not forget to register yourself now. For international participants, your IC number is 111111. Second, we would love to hear from you during today's presentation. If you have any questions for our speakers, please feel free to send it through the chat box. The speaker will be answering questions at the end of the session. If we don't get to your questions during today's webinar, we will be sure to follow up afterwards. And last, we'd like to encourage you to share today's webinar with your social network. Now, let me introduce you to our speakers for today. What makes our first speaker one of its kind with a unique personality is the fact that she is one of the key players in the development and implementation of English language education policy. It is no doubt that with her vast knowledge and experience, the Ministry of Education Malaysia has appointed her as an advisor for English language matters, not once, but for the fourth time, chair of the English Language Quality and Standards Council. She was also the founding chair of the Council of Language Deans, and later when she stepped down as the dean, she was appointed as advisor to the council. She is currently chair of the Committee for the Development of the Ecosystem Model for Public Universities and chair of the MUET Syllabus Revision Committee. This remarkable lady was chair of the English Language Division, head of the English Language Department, and dean of the Faculty of Language and Linguistics. She's also on the editorial board of International ISI Index and Scopus Index journals and other international peer-reviewed linguistics and applied linguistics journals. She was also frequently been invited as keynote or plenary speaker at international conferences in Malaysia and abroad. Her latest book, entitled Spoken English for Non-Native Speakers of English, From Spellings to Interaction, was published in 2019. She's also the writer and editor of a handbook entitled A Handbook for Learning English and Beyond, a holistic learning environment in higher education, published by the Ministry of Education Malaysia in 2019. Ladies and gentlemen, she's none other than Professor Dr. Zuraida binti Muhammad Dawn. Welcome, Professor Zuraida.
Thank you, Prema, for that introduction. It's very nice.
You're welcome. And our second speaker is one of the greatest thinkers that I have come across. Every article that he has written delivers a similar level of impact. Among the topics that he has worked on are related to content analysis of gender representation in children's literature and lexical choices and the construction of gender in Malaysian children's literature. He works on cross-disciplinary research by drawing on his background in applied linguistics to examine narratives in the disclosure of information through annual reports, CSR reports, and websites, with the aim of examining issues of transparency and good governance practices. Given his background in English language teaching, he's also interested in research areas such as language and identities, secondary education, language education, and educational policy. Prior to joining the university, he was an English language teacher. He's currently an associate professor at the Academy of Language Studies, University Technology Mara, and research fellow at the university's Accounting Research Institute. He has gone on to make major contributions in the field of education by being the president of the Malaysian English Language Teacher Association. He's none other than Associate Professor Dr. Ramesh Nair. So welcome. Hello, Dr. Ramesh. Okay. Welcome to both of you to this webinar series. It's a pleasure having both of you to talk about leadership in English language education reform in Malaysia. So without any further ado, I'd like to kick things off by welcoming Associate Professor Dr. Ramesh Nair. Over to you.
Thank you for your very kind introduction. Both Prof. Zuraida and I would like to thank you. We'd also like to thank the IPG KBA for inviting us to speak in your leadership webinar series. Rather than address leadership from a we thought that we would like to locate our discussion of leadership based on our experience with English language education reform in Malaysia. Education by nature is evolutionary. From time to time, nations must reassess what we deliver in our classrooms, in our schools, because as societies evolve, so too must education. So simply put, in Malaysia, we have witnessed some significant changes in our curriculum reforms. In the 1980s, we had significant reform in our education system with the introduction of the KBS and KBSR. And since then, we've not seen any significant our curriculum until very recently when we had the introduction of the KSSR and KSSM curriculums. Within that shift in the curriculum was significant reforms in English language education. So for the benefit of people who have joined us today, Prof. Zuraida, who may not be as familiar with the reform process as teachers in our schools, let's begin by talking a little bit about the reform agenda and how it all began.
Thank you, Dr. Ramesh. Yes, it's my pleasure to talk about the reform agenda, the English language education reform agenda. Let me just give you some background about this reform, the reform of English language education in Malaysia. The government set up, first of all, what we call the English Language Standards and Quality Council in 2013, November 2013. And the council was assigned to come up with what we call the roadmap. That was the beginning of the journey for all of us to come up what we call the policy for English language education in Malaysia and the roadmap itself, which is actually the implementation policy plus implementation plan, you can see from there. And well, we worked on the council and other members of the research group worked on the roadmap, and we managed to complete the roadmap in 2015 and submit it to the Ministry of Education. Now, what is this roadmap about? You see, in MEB, which was produced in 2013, Malaysia has an aspiration to benchmark its English language education to international standard. That was the beginning of it all. And the MEB has identified the CFR as a possible benchmark. And what happened was that in 2013, there was a baseline study was conducted to see. Hello, a baseline study was conducted in order to find out the proficiency levels of our students and teachers, benchmark against English against the CFR. Now, what the council did was we studied the findings from the baseline study and came up with the roadmap, and we set targets. We set targets. What we call at first we call it aspirational targets, then we call stage targets. What we need to achieve at every stage of the learning. Let me just say what the roadmap is. Now the roadmap is, shall I put in practice what was envisioned in the MEB and came up with a plan in order to achieve our dream, which is to align our English language education system to the common European frame of reference. In order to do that, we set a 10-year plan. I would say 11, because the first year was us coming out with the roadmap. So, and we set a 10-year plan from 2016. We started 2015 when the roadmap was produced to 2025. And we divided this journey into 3 phases. The first phase, which is from 2015 to 2016, this is when we produced the roadmap. Because as I said to people, you cannot achieve your aspiration unless you've got a plan. And this roadmap has a very detailed plan on what we're supposed to do in order to achieve what we aspire to achieve, which is to align English language education system to the CFR. And this is a systemic change, which is a large-scale change in the English education system. Again, I said we divide the phase into 3. The first phase, 2015-2016, that's where the roadmap was produced. In 2016, what we did was we planned how we're going to go ahead. Let me, if you can see from the slides there, 2017, 2020, that's the second phase. I'm going to talk about that as well. And 2021 to 2025 is the third phase. So we are going to the third phase soon. Yeah. So we have finished with the first phase. We are at the end of the second phase, and we're going into the third phase. Now, as I said just now, we started with the baseline study. And then we need to make sure that when we target, when we come up with the achievement targets, or rather stage targets, we must make sure that it is possible for us to achieve it. So what we did another study called the evaluation study, which was in 2017, and then we reset the targets. As you can see, the targets now, as you can see, for preschool, moving towards A1, primary A2, secondary, the end of secondary, the target is exit secondary, which is from Form 1, Form 2, Form 3, Form 4, Form 5, Form 5, exit B1, post-secondary, yeah, Form 6 or upper 6, and some of them go to matriculation, yeah, they are supposed to leave Form 6 on exit B2, university B2 to C1, because it takes a long time for a person to move up from B2 to C1. So we thought it's best for us to put B2 to C1. And not only that, we also have teacher education. Ramesh, can we go to the previous slide, please? Ramesh, can we go to the previous slide? Ramesh, the previous slide. Yeah. If you can see from this slide that what we mean by alignment is that we aligned when we say we align the English language education system, we actually align our curriculum, learning materials, teaching and learning materials, as well as assessment to the CFR. That's what we did, yeah? That's what we have set our target. And you can see that the one in green, that's the roadmap. In there, we put the vision for the nation, aspiration as well, and how we're going to achieve our aspiration. Now we're going to look at this diagram there. If you look at this diagram, there are 3 phases, and the end of the journey is 2025. This is when we are supposed to achieve our targets. As I said before, preschool towards A1, that is supposed to be achieved in 2025. Our students should be able to achieve these targets in 2025. But as I said just now, we have done whatever we can in order to make sure that our students achieve the targets, and the journey is ongoing, but we hope that we achieve that. Now, in order to do that, we need to make sure that whatever is in the roadmap in terms of the implementation plan, this is actualized in reality. So the MOE has decided to work in collaboration with Cambridge. So they come up with what we call MOE CE collaboration program. And the program, you can see from before that, Ramesh, you can see the aim is to build teacher capacity to provide the tool for implementation in class. So that's, in short, what the roadmap is about. And we are now in phase, going towards phase 3.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Obviously, it's a long journey, this reform process. And throughout this journey, yes, and throughout this journey, there have been a lot of calls for reforms in English language education. predates even this to align the curriculum to the CFR and things like that.
Yes.
And even with alignment and the
Mm.
introduction of the new curriculum,
Yeah.
there have been calls from many quarters, parents,
Mm.
teachers, educators, politicians. I remember when the new curriculum took off and the new textbooks were introduced, there were quite a lot of opposing voices on the selectionally aligned distributed textbooks. Obviously, people have very strong opinions, and quite rightly so, because education affects us all. And so let's come back to this theme of leadership and how important is leadership in engaging with stakeholders, particularly during the reform process for English education.
Yeah, yes, of course. Leadership is very, very important because, first of all, if you don't have the right leadership, the right mindset to come up with this kind of policy and to implement it, it will not work. So leadership is, as I said, particularly in the very early stage of its implementation, because we are supposed to communicate with people and to tell them why it is important for us to align our English language education to international standards. And for most people, this is quite, because something new can be quite fearful and frightening, and can be apprehensive to most people. Now, when we talk about stakeholders, and you're talking here about stakeholders, when we talk about leadership, in a reform such as this, leadership is critical to the success of English language education system. And we are talking about systemic change that needs to take place at different levels of administration and practice. You can see from this diagram there, I put it there in order for us to discuss. There are at the supra-macro level, this is where the government is. This is where policy is being made. Yeah, and usually policy, most of the time when the policy fails, it is because it's top down. It is top down, and people don't understand why we're doing it. And teachers are forced to implement in the classroom. Parents understand what this is all about. The general public do not know why we need to change. Yeah. So because of this, there must be engagement at different levels, not just implementation at different levels of planning and implementation. We need to share with people what we are doing and explain to them why we're doing it. So, for example, from the macro, from the government ministries, there must be engagement with, for example, the state and district education departments, which is supposed to be level 4. That's a state education, for example, Johor State Education Department. Yeah, they need to know what it's all about. And beyond that, the micro planning, schools need to know, headmasters need to understand. So there must be engagement, and this engagement must be continuous at all levels, and not just from the top leaders, but also from heads of divisions, so that that correct information, relevant information being disseminated to all the stakeholders. Shall we look at the next slide, Ramesh? Here, when we talk about sustainability of reform, if we want to sustain the reform, we need to have continuous stakeholder engagement by MOE leaders at different levels, from the KSU, Secretary General, the top, from Director General down to division heads, as well as people from state department, state education department, district as well, district education department as well. Everybody needs to know what this reform is all about. So that's why I put, if you look at on the slide, I have put some the things that we need to do in order to make sure that the reform is that people do not reject the reform because of a misunderstanding or not clear about the reform. So we have got to do this. Number one, when leaders must always engage in order to build consensus. This is what we call consultative leadership. Of course, it doesn't mean that we keep changing. That's not good. But we need to build consensus through engagement with people, through engaging people at different levels, from from the top to the teachers in the classroom, parents as well. And there are, like you said, there are lots of grievances and issues. I would say issues being raised and problems. So we need to address the legitimate concerns. Like one of the concerns that was raised was that we are using international textbook. Why are we using international textbook? Why don't we use our own textbook? Now, one of the things that we have always said is that when we talk about CFR, I mean, it is still new for us. And we need to know what the CFR is, and you've got to not only be a good textbook writers, but you need to be able to align whatever it is in the textbook to the CFR. That will take time, yeah? And another thing is that we need to know when a textbook is set to be CFR aligned, it is really CFR aligned, so that when teachers use them, there is no, there is no ambiguity, no problem that will crop up saying that it is not CFR aligned. So because of that, we thought that of using, at the beginning, of course, to use international text for a start, yeah? So that we ourselves at the same time build the capacity, our own people build the capacity in order to produce our own textbook. And another thing, one of the things, especially now with COVID virus, with pandemic and so on, there is a need for us to be able to understand people's culture, to know what the world is out there, what the world is like out there. So international bring this into the classroom, and this is very important, particularly for our students in rural areas. So, but as I said, this is just beginning of the reform. And another important thing is that when we have continuous engagement, there will be information. Information will be made available to the public, and this information is not just made available, not just relevant, but it is correct. The information must be correct, because as I said, if you don't give correct information to the public become more apprehensive, and this may result in the implementation being disrupted. And another thing is that in the process of learning how to align and learning how to use aligned textbooks in the classroom, we've got to also help the teachers to change. We need to give teachers tools to change. Yeah, for example, teachers need to be given a curriculum framework so that they can know the development of learning from beginning from preschool up to Form 5. So the curriculum frame does that. It's got all the content standards as well. And also teachers need to be able to be motivated in order to improve outcomes. And this can be done if the top leadership engage continuously with the teachers and make them feel comfortable, and so that they feel that they're being supported. And another thing is that in this period of pandemic, it is very important for us, especially the leadership in MOE as well, for all of us, to have more realistic expectations about the reform and the nature of the reform in order to improve outcomes. So these are the things that one needs to take consideration when we talk about leadership. Leadership which is continuously engaging with stakeholders at different levels.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, Prof. Zhu, obviously this reform process is a process where we are entering uncharted waters in a lot of ways. Yes. You talked about how we need to engage with the public, but even before engaging with the public, engagement between divisions within the Ministry of Education It's also something that we at the ELSQSA have seen as very important. Obviously, this reform process involves reforms in the curriculum, and the curriculum is tied to teacher education, and it is tied to assessments as well. So we see various divisions within the MOE having to work together. Can you talk about how the ELSQC as a council is supporting this engagement with the various divisions within the Ministry of Education?
Yes, this is about buying in at different levels. Perhaps before that, I would just like to share with the viewers that when we talk about engagement, there are two levels, or I would say two stages of engagement. The first stage is we have to engage. The council had to engage with the ministry when we came up with a proposal for the reform of English language education. So the proposal was submitted to the ministry, and I wrote a white paper and presented to the ministry in 2014, if I'm not mistaken, and that was accepted. So that was engaging at the highest level. ELSQC engaging the ministry at the highest level. Once it was accepted at the proposal level, we had to engage with not just the top leaders of MOE, but also the medium leaders as well, the heads of very different divisions, the heads of curriculum, the heads of assessment, the heads of materials, and so on. So we had to engage, and not only that, we also had to engage with the other MOE officers, because we are talking about concerted effort from lead agencies to work together in order to produce this reform. Because as you said, Dr. Ramesh, this reform is holistic, and not just holistic, it is integrated, which means that people from different divisions need to work together. There's two stages involving different, so people from different divisions need to work together. So even before the roadmap was implemented, we had to engage. So this is very important for any reform. We have to engage people, particularly government officers, in order to have a buy-in. Once there was a buy-in, so we produced the roadmap itself, which is 400 odd pages. At the end of I think about more than 40 pages, just the implementation plan, maybe more than that. We submitted to the ministry, and that's it. So then it's accepted. So that's the first stage of engagement. The second stage of engagement is the implementation itself. As Dr. Ramesh said, we have different divisions working on different things. Like, for example, BPK has to come out, or curriculum division has to come out with the curriculum. So they've got to, and they have to work together with people from assessment, and all of them need to work together with people producing the materials. Well, in terms of selection of books, and also with what do you call it? IPGM, Institute of Teachers Training Colleges, then to produce teachers who are also aware, have knowledge about the CFR. And universities have to come in because they train teachers teaching secondary. So we have all people coming together in order to make sure that this roadmap is implemented and that everybody knows what we're doing. So reform, when the reform is implemented, we have to, ELSQC has to engage with different, what you call the stakeholders in MOE itself. And to the extent, I must share this with the viewers, all of us had to even attend the workshop conducted by Cambridge. You see, we had a workshop. We would like to cascade information from Cambridge to the teachers. So all the workshops, most of the workshops, I would say, were attended by the council members, so that the council members engage directly with different what you call staff members in different divisions. So that is truly not just engaging, but working with with people from the ministry, so that they actually trust us. Any reform, you must develop trust. Yeah, there must be trust, not just for them to trust us, for us to trust them. So there must be trust between different parties, because these are, as you said, is something which we have not done before. We need support, and we need support. Okay.
Right. So let's return to that model that we looked at just now. The one about leadership in the macro and micro
Yes.
levels. Obviously, the success of the reform agenda is dependent on what takes place in school, right?
Oh yeah.
Because in schools,
Definitely.
with the new curriculum,
Yes.
reforms are not just in the hands of the English language teacher alone, but within the entire ecosystem in schools needs to change.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, how is leadership at schools in ensuring the success of the reform agenda?
Yeah, there's a very good point, because sometimes, particularly for policymakers, somehow once we have done the policy, we tend to not say not engaging, but not to pay much attention to what is going at school. So, and particularly at school, we do need to have leaders who are also what we call transformative change leaders, the headmasters and the school, or the top school leaders in school. And for reforms such as this, we need to have leaders who are very effective and who have a transformative mindset. That means these leaders must not fear transformation, must not fear change, but embrace change, but at the same time support the teachers. Yeah. So we are talking about not just addressing the cognitive aspects the cognitive aspects of us, but also the emotional aspect that come with change. For example, if you look at the slide itself, when we talk about change has to be, we have to change the whole ecosystem. In the sense that if you want to improve the use of English in the classroom, in school, and you want students to be able to communicate. CFR is about developing communicative competence. It's making sure that students are able to communicate in speaking, in writing, be able to listen, and also be able to read. These are all part of communicative ability, which means that students and teachers need to use the language. It is not just learning from books. It's not enough to have, to teach in the classroom. Language actually is part of being human. It's part of us as a human being. We must communicate. So this is when school leaders are very important. School leaders need to create what we call a supportive learning environment. It doesn't need to be doesn't need to incur much money. It's just an environment is conducive. It encourages students to use English. Encourages teachers to be able to communicate with the students, and also involve what we call real experiential learning and personal development. I think LTC is helping in this. The LTC is helping school by coming up with what they call highly immersive program, where you take English outside the classroom, which means that there is no boundary between what is learned in the classroom, what is learned outside. So what you learn in the classroom, you should practice in a nice learning environment. That is supportive learning environment. But for teachers, when we're talking about teachers having to change their practice, their pedagogical practice, a lot of work being placed on, of course, when any change involves work as well, and any change involves a different kind of mindset. So for the teachers, we need to have an environment where the school leaders encourage experimentation, to use new things, to explore and come up with new things of using the language, talking about collaboration among teachers, between teachers, and not just teachers and teachers, but teachers and students, because we are all users of language, yeah, and sharing is encouraged. So in this kind of environment, environment must be as a not top-down kind of environment, but rather an environment that encourages collaborative partnership, encourages experimentation, and encourages personal development, yeah, and a change of mindset, growth mindset, yeah, very important. And also, when people make mistakes, we actually do not look at the mistakes, but look at more the positive side. This is where CFR can come in. CFR talks about what students can do with a language. It is more of what students can do at different levels. Another thing is that for reform to success, we need to build school capacity. How do you do that? This is very important so that we can improve the instructional quality, how it's taught in the class, and also these will, of course, affect student achievement. One of the things that we can do is the school leaders can focus on the development of teachers' knowledge and skills. So if the teachers, now this is very much related to CPD, continuous professional development. It is very good if school leaders encourage teachers to continuously developing themselves, attend workshops, but not just attending workshops, but come back to school, share this knowledge with others, engaging other teachers with the knowledge that they have received, and together you make this knowledge, empower yourself to make this knowledge as part of yourself. That's very important. And the other thing is that when CFR is introduced, it is important for school leaders to work closely with teachers so that there is coherence in the program, so that we can see how the whole English language education, how we can make the whole English language education program in school coherent. Yeah, so we're talking about learning coherent between the teaching in the classroom and learning, using learning materials, and coherence in terms of not just summative assessment, not just assessment at the end where you give marks, but also formative assessment. So the whole thing from teaching and learning to formative assessment, helping the teachers to improve themselves in order to develop, to help the students improve themselves. So this is the kind of environment that is encouraged.
Yes,
yes, it is.
I remember, I think it was last year or the year before, when the ELS QC did a road show, and we went from state to state to speak to school heads, just to highlight to the school heads the reform process was all about. Because if there is no understanding or appreciation of the reform process by school leaders, then actual change is difficult, right? Especially in schools, because the expectation is that students are immersed in an environment where communicating in English is not something which is alien, and without the support of school leaders, this change cannot take place. So sharing of information and is so important, and school heads need to have access to the right information so that they can support the English language teachers better. So tied closely to that, Prof. Zhu, so tied closely to that, Prof. Zhu, is the notion of teachers as change leaders themselves. Obviously, the success of this entire curriculum reform process that we're looking at lies in the hands of our English language teachers, because they are essentially the heroes, right? Without them, there is no reform. So let's talk about teachers as change leaders.
teachers teachers also need to participate as leaders, because reform actually happens in the classroom. Yeah. So when we talk about policies out there, it's very abstract in notion, but it become real, and it become people can see what's happening is in the classroom. So teachers play an important role, and teachers can be leaders. But in order for teachers to be effective leaders, yeah, there must be not just among teachers, but the teachers themselves must have what we call a growth mindset, where learning is part of the process of growth, which means that while they are developing themselves as leaders, they need to empower themselves as well with knowledge in order to enable them to realize they are as leaders, yeah, and to be a role model for others. So in effective leadership among teachers include being able that they have a chance in order to make decisions. They are involved in decision making, and teachers need to make themselves be part of that decision making. They must be part of the team, yet at the same time they contribute to the team. Yeah, and there must be community building, because when we talk about leaders, we're not talking about leaders as we're not talking about authoritarian leaders. Yeah, we're not talking about you do what I say and that's it. We are talking about leadership where people work together, yet at the same time take control of their knowledge, take control of their ability in order to share their knowledge with others. It's more of sharing, so more collaborative kind of leadership. Yeah, and if you look at what is a change leader, for teachers to take up this role in the context of reform, this involves them demonstrating that they are expertise in their instruction. Yeah, that means they have the expert in terms of pedagogical knowledge. They have the pedagogical knowledge and they have the expertise in that, and they also can share that knowledge. Yeah, leadership means believe in your own ability and have confidence in yourself, so that you can share knowledge and empower others to also be good. It's not just about yourself. So that's very important, yeah, for teachers. And the next one is that in order for us to be leaders, we need to always have a growth mindset. That means you need to learn. And people tend to think that learning stops once you finish education, but that is the formal education. In fact, informal education begins as when we begin our career. So teachers need to have constantly, what we call consistently, on a professional learning curve. That's why we've got to provide teachers with CPD, and teachers need to share the knowledge with others. And another thing is for what we call leadership, what we change leader. A change leader always reflects on his or her work, so that you keep on improving. And the most important thing for teachers is that she has to improve, or rather teachers need to improve in order to have their students improve. For students to excel, teachers must also excel. Yeah. So, and students need to see the teachers as role models. And the other thing, as I said, is sometimes we think that research is not important, but for teachers, action research is important. That's how you develop yourself. So they've got to be continuously engage themselves in action research project to examine the effectiveness and their own teaching. How have they performed in the classroom? And I think sometimes we feel a bit, we as teachers, I look at myself as teachers, even though Dr. Ramesh and I, both of us are in university, but we are still teachers. Yeah, we have to look inward, look at ourselves. What have we not done right, or what we have done right? And by looking at us more critically, we can then improve ourselves. And the aim is to improve our students. And when students can see that we are not fearful of learning, they will find, learning is okay. We can make mistakes. Even our lecturers, our teachers learn from, learn. So we're going to learn with them. So that's very important. And change leaders also collaborate with others. Collaborate not just with your peers, collaborate with parents, collaborate with communities, and you engage them in dialogues. This is where leaders, teachers can be leaders. Teachers need to engage with parents because they know what's happening in the classroom. They are our mouthpiece. They know what they need. They need to engage parents so that parents understand why we need to do this, so that parents can come and work together as part of the whole community. And this is where what we call the supportive learning environment, involving others outside the class, outside the school to come in as well. And mentoring new teachers. We tend to forget that, we have very good teachers, very good senior teachers who are about to retire. Yeah? And we also have very good young teachers who want to learn. So we've got to have this mindset where we need to give whatever we have learned, we need to give back. Not just to society, but to those who are going to take over from us. So what we're saying is that mentoring must be part of change leadership. Teachers need to have a few other teachers to mentor with. When we talk about mentor, not just listening to us, but working together, because the young one can tell us what to do in order to improve ourselves. We need to hear their voices, and together we mentor, yet we listen to them, so that our mentoring becomes, so that they see the mentoring as part of their growth, not just part of growth, not just of them, but us as a group. And lastly, I think very important for any change, we must be able to take risks. Yeah, becoming risk takers, which means that at a certain point in our life we take risks, and that means you participate in school decisions. There are sometimes when we do new things, there are always a risk of failure. But in whatever we do in our life, there is always a risk. Yeah, there's always a risk. More importantly, it is not the risk that is more important. It is about doing it. Leaders, successful leaders, change leaders must take risk, but it is calculated risk. It's not just taking risk and not thinking about what the consequences of act will be. It is about taking risk, yet you are prepared for whatever eventualities. So if there is any failure, you know what to do to minimize negative consequences to whatever involved in this change. Yeah. Finally, just our final words. Yeah, Dr. Ramesh talked about how important leadership is, and we are talking about, when we talk about reform, what is more important is kind of change mindset. So we are talking about change leaders who transform, but transforming, some people just like to transform, but you don't take responsibility. I think for any change, for any leaders who are involved in any transformation, any change, they've got to also have the responsibility to also be responsible for the consequences of what decision they make. Yeah, and in this, so when you take responsibility for decision you make, people can see that because they know that you care. This is when the emotional support come in. In any kind of change, people will feel inadequate. Yeah, so they need support. So because of that, for school administrators, school leaders need to support teachers in their work, including this include emotional support, helping teachers to grow and learn, to grow professionally, and also helping teachers to learn. And we've got to create a positive school culture. And this is why we like the CFR, because CFR is very positive, what students can do, what teachers can do, what school leaders can do, so that all of us work together with this positive mindset, with a growth mindset, to make sure that this reform is not a dream. It is not a dream, but it is a reality. By 2025, we make sure that our students achieve the targets that we have set for them, and our teachers also achieve the targets that they have set for their students and for themselves as teachers. Number two, teachers. Teachers need to facilitate student learning. Just quickly, we need to encourage independence and create productive classroom environment. Teachers, I know you are fantastic teachers. You love your students, but re-energize yourself, because sometimes after a while you feel tired, right? I mean, because of all sorts of things and coronavirus and all that. But we need to always, when you look at our students, look at these young faces. They've got a hard time ahead of them. Yeah, we have to help them. We need to make them love learning. We need to make them feel that it's okay to make mistakes. What is not okay is to stop learning. Making mistakes is part of being human being. There's nothing wrong making mistakes. But what is not okay is you are too scared to take risks, so that you don't even want to change. You stay there because you don't want to take risks. Teachers, please make sure that our students can see that all of us need to do this together. And students, of course, we don't include this in our talk, but I think this is very important. Students need to be agents of their own learning. We've got to give them that agency, and then they need to be empowered and they be proactive. This is when supportive learning environment is important. This is when HIP is important, so that students see that learning is not just for teachers. Learning is for them. Teachers just don't teach us. We also need to empower ourselves to learn. And we can do all sorts of things at different levels. So that's where the can-do statements are very important, so that they become part of our philosophy, that we can do, and we take risks, and we work together. That's where change leaders must be part of the reform. Yes.
Thank you, Professor. I've already been queued. I suppose we should open the session for questions.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, is there any questions, Dr. Prema?
Yeah, thank you, Professor Zuraida and Associate Professor Dr. Ramesh Nair, for the insights on leadership in English language education reform. Okay, one interesting point made by Nirmal: the whole idea of change is only possible with consistency in policies, which will show effectiveness of any programs or models to work in the long run. So here I say, when we talk about reform, you mentioned teachers need to change, all right? To change their mindset and ways they teach in terms of the strategies being used and techniques and so on. So are teachers ready for this kind of changes? How far has the workshop for teachers been successful in the area in order for them to implement this roadmap, the reform?
Ramesh, would you like to answer that question? Dr. Ramesh,
maybe
like to respond first?
Just very quickly, my thoughts. Yes. Yeah. So when we talk about consistency, I think, to my mind at least, there is this notion that we seem to be coming up with new programs and new policies all the time, and teachers are sometimes overwhelmed by new programs, or they see the HIP as something which is separate from the introduction of the new line curriculum, when in actual fact it is not. So I think this confusion that well, maybe that's not the right word. It's not confusion, but this idea of consistency is very much tied to dissemination of accurate information. If people are clear on how the entire ecosystem works and how these various programs and projects are actually all interconnected, then we will also realize that there is that aspect of consistency in the implementation of these programs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
If I could add to what Dr. Ramesh said, there is consistency in terms of the targets. That will never change. We have stage targets, so we know where we're going. There is consistency in terms of that we relate our whole English language education system to the CFR. There's consistency in that. That will not change. There is consistency in the sense that curriculum, assessment, and learning, teaching the craft should be seen as integrated, not something that you do in isolation. So assessment is also aligned to the CFR, which means that teachers need to make sure that what is taught in the classroom, it's not the other way around, what is taught in the classroom is being assessed. Yeah. So that's why the curriculum framework is CFR aligned. Textbooks are CFR aligned. Yeah. And teachers, remember, we are still in the we are in the second phase of implementation. Teachers have been trained. That's why we need continuous professional development so that teachers are trained and all of them, the information comes from the same source. It's very important. I think I remember I put something there that you need to have access to correct and relevant information. You make it available to teachers. Yeah, that's very important. Consistency is to that. Yeah.
Okay, one question here from Nurchayani Khalil. How to teach the leadership itself to a very young learner, especially students in kindergarten and first class of elementary school? Okay, I think it's a she, maybe she asked this question. How do we handle kindergarten students actually when we talk about leadership?
Ramesh, you want to? Ramesh, if I can start.
Sorry, but there was quite a bit of static just now, so I didn't quite catch the question.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, sure. We talk about leadership, especially young learners in school, because our focus will be on students, right? So if they are quite young, how do we actually teach leadership to them?
If I can take the question first, and then Ramesh can accept, yeah, because there's a bit of a okay. Now you can't teach little children about leadership. You just look at them.
Yeah.
You look at them. You observe them. You know who are the leaders. Yeah, you know who are the leaders. You say, oh my God, this is going to be the future prime minister. What we're saying is that leadership, particularly for children of that age, they don't understand what leadership is. All they know they want to do certain things and they want to play and all that. But during the play, during the task, when you assign them tasks, you can see them. You can assign them leadership role without telling them you are supposed to be the leader. Yeah. So if you see that particular little boy is very quiet, so assign him something so that he can be a leader. Yeah, he may be a good singer, but maybe a good singer. So when we're talking about little children, young children, it is more of observing what they can do and assign them tasks so that the innate leadership qualities you have in them can come out, and they actually what you call that be in leadership role without realizing that they are leaders. Yeah, and
yes.
You can see even Taiwan can be leaders in different contexts. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. One last question. Sorry, I have one last question to Associate Professor Dr. Ramesh. As the president of MELTA, I'm sure you have very high hopes and expectations in reaching out to the educators in Malaysia. Would you like to highlight some of the activities MELTA is working on to achieve these hopes and expectations?
Thank you. Yes, maybe I'd like to pick up on the point that Prof. Zuraida brought up, a couple of points that she brought up. The first is that, of information sharing, and often information is shared top down, and that can't be helped, right? You have experts sharing information with our teachers, and having our teachers then go into the classroom and execute activities in the classroom to ensure the success of the curriculum. But what MELTA hopes to highlight is that teachers are not simply recipients of knowledge, but also generators of knowledge. And as Prof. Zuraida pointed out, teachers are researchers themselves because they're in the classrooms, they are observing effectiveness all the time. And they are making changes and adjusting. And there's a lot of tacit knowledge which lies within English language teachers. That information needs to be shared with the larger public. What we do at the association is try to create platforms for teachers to be center stage as generators of knowledge, where they come forward and share knowledge. For example, in a few weeks, we're running an international conference for research, and we are hoping to see our teachers as presenters, where they come forward and talk about they have been doing in classrooms, whether it's face-to-face or now with the COVID situation, online lessons. What has worked, what has not worked. I think empowering for the teacher, and also it is an important aspect of growth within the English language and landscape in Malaysia. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Associate Professor Dr. Ramesh. And I'm also aware that tomorrow there will be a webinar session which is organized by Melta. All right, so I think Dr. Salva will be posting the link for everybody. If you're interested, you can actually join this webinar session. It's actually free for everybody. Okay, and also our MASAL conference, which will be held in November. So if you're interested, again, you can actually go to the link and then look into all the activities that we have actually aligned for everyone, all educators in Malaysia and beyond. Yeah, so that brings us to the end of today's webinar session. IPG KBA would like to thank both the speakers for taking time to be with us today. It has been a knowledgeable session, especially on how Malaysia is trying to reform the education system for the betterment of the future generation. So thank you for both of you, Professor Zuraida and Associate Professor Dr. Ramesh Nair. Thank you, everybody, for attending. We hope you have learned and enjoyed this presentation. Please join us with our next webinar series, which will be held next Wednesday, actually, on 20th October, and it will be aired live at 11 a.m. Malaysian time. Have a date with Dr. Azlina Muhammad, who will be focusing on leadership assessment, great leaders in the make. Till then, goodbye from Malaysia.